Good morning, everyone. Um, Today we are back to the study of the book Action and Reaction. I'm just sharing what we did last month, which was chapter 11, which was called The Temple and the Parlatory. We had first an interview, a conversation with Russo. Then they went to the temple of mentioned peace, and we discussed the meaning of the image of the cross and the empty niches that were found in the body of the temple. And then we saw a devotee of the Blessed Virgin Mary before one of the empty niches, and the niche would print the devotee's mental photograph of what she was thinking. And then we follow a devotee of Therese of Lisieux, and we discuss how sanctified spirits attend to their devotees and the issue of this assistance when the spirit being devoutly prayed is not distinguished by the sanctification attributed to them. Finally, we saw a devotee of Bezerra de Menezes, the doctor in Brazil, of the turn of the 19th to 20th century, and the way that he attends to all his devotees in the name of Christ. And finally, they go to the parlatory of mentioned peace, which is the exterior patio of the temple, where there is a lot of struggling spirits, suffering spirits. They couldn't see much what was going on there, and that's where we ended that chapter. So today we go to chapter 12, which is the title of the chapter is Increased Death in English. A better translation will be Aggravated Death, okay, from the original in Portuguese. Increased is not wrong, but aggravated death is more appropriated to what we are going to see here. Okay? Zoraida, can you read for us?
Yes. Increased debt. As other workers of the institution dashed past us with the obvious intent of assisting others, Druso's friend came down the temple stairwell with us, explaining, "A lot of our co-workers use this time to offer their willing service of fraternal love. They listen to the desperate and downcast as far as possible. They provide them with medication and consolation, and not only exhorting them to understanding and serenity, but also going with them to the dark regions or to the spheres of incarnates, where they assist the loved ones who trouble their souls." At that moment, we came into closer contact with the noisy groups. By now, our eyes were accustomed to the dim light, and we were able to make out the pitiful and exotic features in distress all around us. There were women with hard-looking faces disfigured by misery, and men faces tortured by hate and affliction. It would be hard to guess their ages on a human scale. Their wretchedness has turned them into ghosts of bitterness, making them all look very similar. Many of them had hands that looked like withered claws, and in almost all of them, a look of anger or fear revealed the dolorous characteristics of a mind that had descended into the abyss of madness. Moving prayers were mixed together with sinister clamors of rebelliousness. Heartbroken, we observed the crowd milling around it ill-manneredly before the open doors of the peaceful sanctuary, and I asked the assistant why none of them sought shelter inside the hospital temple, which was almost empty by now. Nodding toward the entry where we had just left, Silas gazed at the lit reception area, which from the overwhelming darkness seemed more like a tunnel opening to the light and clarified. Your suggestion would certainly be the ideal solution. However, only those who can bear its light with the respect can enter the sacred room. Almost all the brothers and sisters in this square exhibit disfigurement caused by their perversity or their harbor fear sentiments that their moving prayers fail to hide. With such dispositions, they cannot bear the impact of the light inside because it is made up of special photons characterized by a particular electromagnetic content that is indispensable for the Institute's security. Many of these disturbed brothers and sisters may be clamoring with their lips that they long for the benefits of prayer inside the sanctuary. But in reality, once there, they would love to trample the sublime name of our Heavenly Father in a display of sarcasm and blasphemy. So, in order to keep them from disturbing the divine atmosphere that we must provide for pure and comforting prayer, our guides have ordered us to keep the light gradated against easily avoidable disturbances and harm. Hilario was surprised and considered. That means that only the sincere repentance of the soul can tune in to the electromagnetic forces permeating the room, precisely confirmed the assistant. Our institution offers open arms to pain and suffering, but not to rebelliousness and desperation. Otherwise, it would be condemned to destruction and discredit in this tormented place.
Thanks, Zoraida.
Yeah,
It's a small passage, but with so much to discuss.
yes.
So the first thing here, as they are there in the parlatory, there is workers of the institution um, going around providing what we do at our centers called fraternal assistance. A lot of co-workers use this time to offer their willing service of fraternal love. They are trying to help and assist those suffering spirits, the desperate and the downcast, as Andre describes here, actually Silas describes here, and provide them with medication and consolation, exhorting them to understanding and serenity, but also accompanying them to the dark regions or to the sphere of incarnates, where they assist the loved ones who trouble their souls. You see here, when we talk about our work at the Spirit Center in terms of both fraternal assistance and mediumship meeting, we provide help and assistance. We many times tell the suffering spirits, the struggling spirits, that they are going to be helped and assisted by the team in the spiritual house of assistance that we are, and they are provided with understanding, with consolation, medication. Remember, we're talking about the spiritual world. What is the medication in the spiritual world? Spiritual medication. There is medication there. Sometimes the spirit will receive the assistance, and we tell them, you are being assisted, you are being receiving the medication you need. It is medication. So in this paragraph, it talks about our work at the Spirit Center, how similar or as a copy of what is really done in these transitory houses of assistance in the spiritual world, where you have all these struggling spirits. And again, we have to think here about the spirits. They are already inside the transitory house of assistance in the parlatory, which is the outside part. It's not inside. So they are not even outside, which are the spirits that are in no condition of being assisted. So if you imagine at our Spirit Center, there are spirits that are kept outside during the meetings because they are in no conditions of being helped and assisted. They are rebellious and angry spirits that are brought inside that have an opportunity to listen to us, sometimes to talk to us, because they have some opening there to receive the help and assistance provided. Doesn't mean that they're going to accept it, they're going to act on it, they're going to to change with it, but they have this opportunity. There is something there. The spirits that are outside, there is nothing there that would allow them to receive the assistance that that is provided here. Okay, so some of them are helped with their loved ones, and we'll see to where they assist their loved ones who trouble their souls. We are going to see later in this chapter this case of aggravated death, which is the title of this chapter. But I think this paragraph is very important because it relates a lot with both fraternal assistance done in the spiritist centers and help and the dialogue that is done in assistance for the spirits, suffering spirits that come to the meeting. It's interesting when Andre Luiz says that it will be hard to guess their ages on a human scale. Again, there are spirits in the spiritual world. What their reflection, their images, their mental state, and by that you cannot tell about their age, because your age changes when you are back in the spiritual world according to your mind. So that's why Andre Luiz says here it will be hard to guess their ages on a human scale because of the transformation they cause to themselves. And the description of them, some had hands like withered claws, almost all of them a look of anger and or fear. And what they were doing, there are prayers, but sometimes the prayers were accompanied by rebelliousness. So they are not yet fully sincere prayers, because those that are with fully sincere prayers, they are brought inside the temple. So if they are outside, they are already in some conditions on listen, on have dialogues, but they are still not 100% sincere in what they are asking for. They still carry rebelliousness, anger, and other things. And then Andre Luiz talks about the tunnel opening to the light, right? Which is when you look at the temple that we saw in last chapter, the lit reception area, and from the overwhelming darkness seemed more like a tunnel opening to the light. And when I read that, immediately what came to my mind is the experiences described by most of the near-death experiences that we read about, that they talk a lot about the tunnel opening, and when they see their loved ones, or they see spirits, or they see other things, they see a light at the tunnel, right? And I thought that maybe that's more or less the same thing. I was reading about a surgeon, a brain surgeon, that was describing his experience with the near-death experience, and people that have experienced this cases. And he said, one thing when we talk about near-death experiences, one thing that we can say is people that come back and report what they have seen in the spiritual world or in this tunnel or wherever they go are discarnated spirits, right? You don't see people coming back and talking about meeting living incarnated spirits, which is very interesting. That shows that they had this experience is real, right? Because if it was in their mind, not in a real experience, they will tell about meeting the loved ones that are present that are incarnated, right? Not loved ones that discarnated, which it's another proof that the experiences of near-death experiences are real. But anyway, this was a sidetrack here on this phrase that I thought it was interesting. Then Silas, of course, Andre Luiz asked why they cannot be brought inside, and Silas explained only those who can bear its light with due respect can enter the sacred room, meaning those that are prepared, that too much light can blind, those that are not fully repentant, fully aware or humble enough to receive the assistance inside, to help inside, have to stay outside because they still do not have the full conditions. They still harbor fierce sentiments that their moving prayers fail to hide. This is very interesting, right? They are praying, but it's not 100% sincere. We cannot say it's not sincere. We cannot say that they are praying because they are trying to fake it to be accepted. It's not that. They are sincerely praying, but the prayers cannot yet harbor what's going inside, the sentiments of anger, of hatred, and these inferior sentiments that prevent them from being helped and assisted inside with a more efficient way of resolving their problems. So Silas says here, many of these disturbed brothers and sisters may be clamoring with their lips that they long for the benefits of prayer inside the sanctuary. But in reality, once there, they will love to trample the sublime name of our Heavenly Father. Meaning, if they are brought inside, they would be alleviated of the pain, but immediately they'll go back to the sarcasm, blasphemy, blaming everyone else but themselves for everything that is happening to them. And that would disturb the ambient and would cause harm to the work that is being done inside. So that's when Hilario says that means only the sincere repentance of the soul can tune in to the electromagnetic forces permeating the room inside. Yes. And Silas then says, our institution offers open arms to pain and suffering, but not to rebelliousness and desperation. Again, it's very important that we understand, because many times we read and we read about the suffering spirits, the struggling spirits. They need to be open to receive the assistance. We can apply this to our incarnated brothers and sisters here, right? When we deal with problems of addiction, of inferior tendencies, that they come to us with complaints, with pain and suffering, but they are not ready to face their challenges, their imperfections. They are still prone to rebellion and desperation, so they cannot be helped if they don't want to do the work themselves. That's what Silas is telling us here, right? Institution offers open arms to pain and suffering, but not to rebellion and desperation. So everyone that is in search, looking for help is always there. It's always available to us. Now, we have to open ourselves to receive the help and assistance. We have to be ready to do it. And that's what all this first part that we are studying here deals with the spirits that are outside the temple in the parlatory, the so-called parlatory, right? Elmo, anything to add here? So much in this small part, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. Can you just refresh my memory here? The parlatory, the spirits go in there voluntarily, like they're not brought in, right? They came in on their own, correct?
Well, they can be there on their own, but of course they are inside the area of the transitory house of assistance. They are just outside of the main building, so to say. So
Right.
either they are allowed to come from the lower zones outside the temporary house of assistance, or they go directly from where they were, but they are good enough to be inside the area of the transitory house of assistance, but not well enough to be brought inside the temple, right? To receive direct assistance. It's an
Okay.
intermediary stage, so to say.
Okay, yeah, because that would be a difference from the work that I do in the center, right? Where their spirits are brought in our mediumship meetings, sometimes even against their will, which is not the case of this palatory space.
Yes, we are making an analogy with the work at the Spiritist Center. Of course, there are differences, but again, there are spirits that want to come into the Spiritist Center and not allowed, right?
Yes.
Same thing here.
Yeah, yeah. And I find interesting how the petty spirit also in it losing in its human form slowly because of the moral problems almost resemble animality, as if the petty spirit retrocess its shape to the beginning of our existence before you become an individualized intelligent principle, right? Where disfigurement of the human shape and the hands start to look more like claws and stuff like that. That I found very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, let's move on.
Yes. At this point of the conversation, we were interrupted by dozens of withered arms begging for help. Silas looked at them compassionately, but didn't stop until we were met by a hurried woman shouting anxiously, Assistant Silas, Assistant Silas. Our friend recognized her because he stopped abruptly and held out his friendly hand, asking, What is it, Louisa? Both showed curiosity and concern. Displaying irrepressible signs of anguish, the discarnate woman cried out without further ado, Help, oh help. My daughter, my poor Marina, is about to give up. I've fought with all my might to keep her from committing suicide, but now I feel weak and incapable. Sobs suffocated her throat, inhibiting her voice. Speak up, said Silas assertively, as if the crisis were clouding the mental serenity he needed to grasp the situation. Now on her knees, the wretched creature looked up with tearful eyes and begged, Assistant, forgive my insistence on talking about my misfortune, but I'm a mother. My poor daughter is planning to kill herself tonight, immersing her conscience even deeper into the darkness. Silas told her to go back to her earthly home as best she could, and joining hands, we set out quickly for the objective at hand. On the way, the assistant informed us, this is a matter involving a former ward at Mansau Pass who reincarnated almost 30 years ago under his auspices. As we give her assistance, you'll be able to observe a case of increased depth. Noticing that Zilas became silent, Hilario remarked, The number of women praying and giving assistance around here is really impressive. Worried as he was, Silas tried to smile, but it didn't make it to his lips. He replied, Yes, it is. Very few women, very few wives and mothers can leave for happier regions without their loved ones. A woman's immense love is one of the most powerful forces in the divine creation. There was no more time for talk, however. On the physical plane, we had arrived at a small house consisting of 3 untidy, small rooms. The clock indicated a few minutes past midnight. Sila's mere presence scared off several spirits of darkness, lingering there with the clear intention of causing trouble, and we entered a simple room. We could tell without words that the problem was grave. Next to an exhausted and extremely troubled young woman, a girl 2 or 3 years old was whimpering restlessly. We could see in her glazed and listless eyes the stigma of those marked for irredeemable suffering upon being born. However, judging from Sila's undisguised concern, we can tell that the poor woman should be the focus of our most urgent attention. The wretch was on her knees, desperately kissing the little girl, revealing the indefinable anguish of someone who is saying goodbye forever. Then she grabbed a glass of containing an obviously highly poisonous liquid, but before she could raise it to her lips, The assistants told her in an assertive voice, "How can you think of the darkness of death without the light of prayer?" The miserable creature didn't hear his question with her physical ears, but his words pierced her mind like a strong blaze of wind. Her eyes shone with a new glow, and the glass trembled in her now undecided hands. Our guide opened his arms to her, enveloping her in anesthetizing fluids of love and kindness. Marina, the sister whose desperate mother had pleaded for help, was overcome with new thoughts and put the dangerous glass back in its original spot. Under Sila's vigorous influence, she stood up mechanically and went to bed and prayed. "Dear God of infinite goodness," she began aloud, "have mercy on me and forgive me for my failure. I can't go on anymore. Without me, my husband will be better off in the leprosarium, and my poor little daughter will find generous hearts who can give her love. I'm out of money. I'm sick. Our unpaid bills are crushing me. How can I beat the disease that is killing me if I had to sew all the time? Torn between my husband and my little girl who demand my assistance and care." Silas administered magnetic passes to sedate her, and introducing her to make a light movement with her arm, she knocked over the dangerous glass, which crashed to the floor, spilling its deadly liquid. Weeping corporously, the poor creature insisted disconsolingly, "Oh Lord, have mercy on me." In her thoughtless gesture, she recognized a manifestation of an outside power that had kept her from taking her own life, and she began praying silently with obvious signs of fear and remorse, a mental attitude that increased her passivity and enabled the assistant to put her to sleep. Silas emitted a strong jet of fluid energy over her encephalic cortex, and unable to explain what was happening, the young woman fell into a turmoil that spread over her nervous system and left her sleeping heavily, as if she had drunk a powerful sedative.
Okay, thanks, Soraya. So here, what we are seeing is the case, the aggravated death, right? Someone comes and calls Assistant Silas. He recognizes her, Luisa, and she asks for help with her daughter, Marina, who is about to commit suicide. And the mother is trying to help, but she's feeling unable to help, impotent to help. And Silas asked her to talk about it, and she said that the daughter is planning to kill herself tonight. And then Silas said, "Let's go to her home." And as early as they can, they went there. And Silas tell Hilario and Andre Luiz that they will be able to observe a case of aggravated death. When they arrived there, but before, Hilario said something about the woman praying and giving assistance around there in that area, and Silas explained that very few wives and mothers can live for happier regions without their loved ones, meaning they get stuck. They cannot move to better places, leaving their loved ones behind. It is something that we read and we see a lot, right? The care, normally the care that women have for their children, for their loved ones, is, as Silas says here, is one of the most powerful forces in the divine creation. And again, it talks of the necessity of us on our journey to become perfected spirits, to go through the different experiences of being incarnated as a man and as a woman, to develop both sides of our of who we need to become on our evolutionary journey, right? Because we can, as going through the love that a woman has for their children, is something that we can only learn when we go through the experience of giving birth or having children. Or it's not necessarily giving birth physically, but of having what is considered sons and daughters, right? So when they arrive at the small house, it's interesting that Andre Luiz describes that the mere presence of Silas scared off several spirits of darkness that we are there around, trying to cause trouble. Of course, when someone is trying to commit suicide, there is a lot of inferior spirits that are there trying to influence, directly associated with the possible victim, or indirectly associated, but or because of other different things. So Silas was able to, just by his presence and by his light, was capable of scared off several spirits. They arrive there. They see next to the troubled young woman, a girl that is 2 or 3 years old. We are going to read more about the girl. What's the problem her? Because they could see in her glazed and listless eyes the stigma of those marked for irredeemable suffering upon being born. And we are going to read about the girl later and understand why Andre Luiz talks about this. Then the young woman was ready to drink poison, and before she was able to drink, of course, they arrive at the right moment. Nothing happens by chance. Silas connects to her mind and puts in her mind the phrase, "How can you think of darkness of death without the light of prayer?" He tells her this phrase. She, of course, doesn't hear with her physical ears, but the words go into her mind like a blast of wind, and then she hesitates, right? And she doesn't go ahead. And then the Silas embraces her, envelops her in love and kindness, and this is enough for her to hesitate and to stop and reflect on what she was going to do. We can reflect on this and say, well, but doesn't this happen with all cases of suicide? Yes, but attempted suicide or suicide. But who are those that are ready to listen? Who are those that open their ears to listen to the advice of the spirits? We all have our free will, and in the end, our free will always prevail. So we were going to make the decisions based on our own free will. If we don't open our minds to listen to the spirits that are trying to help us, we are going to use our free will to go ahead and make the mistakes we make, right? So he enveloped her when she allowed him to engage mentally with her. He embraced her, and with his anesthetizing fluids of love and kindness. So she put the glass back on the table, and she began to pray a little bit. She asked for forgiveness, but then she started saying what was her problems, right? The husband was in a hospital for leper. The daughter was sick, and she also sick, didn't have money to pay, and so she was completely desperate. Then Silas applied some magnetic passes to sedate her and made her make a light movement with the arm that knocked the glass, spilling the deadly liquid. So why did he do that? Because that would make it more difficult for her if she falls again into doubt, into hesitation, and couldn't decide, and then it would be more complicated for her to go back and get another glass, more poison. I don't know if she had more or not. It doesn't say here. And so sometimes when we some of our actions that we we take in our lives are guided by spirits. And so, of course, what she did here, she knocked the glass, broke the glass, she made a mess. That was done for a good purpose. So let us not let's reflect on some things that happens to us in our lives. If they are they look like accidents, and sometimes they are there to help us and assist us. So he puts her to sleep, a torpor that spread, and put her to sleep like she had drunk a sedative. That was what Silas gave to her. Okay? This was more of a description of what we are facing. Elmo, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think I find very interesting, and I think that requires a lot of more studies is the issue of the woman, because we know the spirit has no gender, right? That's a fact. And we know that in the spiritual world, we have our self-identity. We identify ourselves as male and female because of our still condition, so to say. But it shows the importance of having the differentiation on gender in our progress, because while a woman identifies herself as a mother, as a wife, it seems like her, for what I read here, the intensity, so to say, of the love of the spirit that identifies herself as a woman, as a mother, as a husband, as a wife, seems to be more intense, or seems to be more driving into assisting to help, more than the ones that identify themselves as men. And it seems to me to be the case. But again, I think this requires a revision on this topic of gender in the spiritual world. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we are talking here in general, right? Of course, there are exceptions on both sides, right? You see fathers with this immense love that is more sometimes mostly attributed to women, right? And we see women that lacks this immense love. So, but in general, that's what it is there for, right?
Yeah, and if you see the differentiation, also woman is more likely to seek assistance, to rely on help, than men seems to be more practical, self-sufficient, and we see that even as well incarnate as well. I think that is very interesting. Study a little bit more of the gender in the spiritual world, even though we know that the spirit itself does not have a gender, but we have this self-identity in the spiritual world. And with this woman also, it's interesting that one of the things that goes in her favor in her attempt suicide is that she places her intention, saying that the husband and the daughter would be better off without her. It's not that she's killing herself because of her, it is a selfishness, but in her case, she's is almost that she's seeking to commit suicide because she believes that their loved ones will be better off without her. That I think alleviates a little bit and declares that she's more willing to do something good, as I just said, be open to receive the assistance that Silas was often. That again, we have the free will. We could just said, "Get away from me! I'm doing this," and Silas could do nothing about it. But she was willing to receive, and I think the fact that her intentions for suicide was not a completely selfish behavior, at least for what she says over there, it was in order to help the husband and wife and the daughter that they would be better off without her.
Yeah, good point. Okay. All right, so this next part, it's a long one that tells the whole story. We're going to mostly be reading here, not much to talk about because it's just the description of everything that happened and why she finds herself in this situation, and the daughter and the husband that is in the hospital. Okay.
Okay. Silas interrupted his assistants and explained to us kindly, "This is an overwhelming example of increased debt." Nodding toward the young mother lying there, he continues, Marina came from Masawa to help Jorge and Zelda, her creditors. In the last century, she came between the two newlyweds and introduced them to commit deplorable acts that resulted in anguish madness in the spirit world. After all involved had endured a long time of suffering, the Lord allowed several of their friends to intercede for them before the higher powers so that they could amend their destinies. And all three were reborn into the same social environment for their work of regeneration. Marina was our sister Luisa's eldest. She received the task of watching over her little sister Zelda, who grew up in the warmth of her sisterly love. However, according to the plan traced out for them before their reincarnation, when they re-entered adulthood a few years ago, young Zelda met Jorge and they instinctively renewed their love interest from the past. They loved each other passionately and got engaged. But Marina didn't live up to the promises she had made in the greater world. According to those plans, she was to love the same man as before, but this time in the silence of constructive self-denial. She was to lend support to her little sister, formerly rejected spouse, in the purifying struggles that her present life would have offered her. Taken with intense passion, she devised a deplorable scheme, completely deaf and blind to the warnings of her conscience. She started to involve her sister's fiancé in a large web of seduction. For her secret objective, she attracted the support of capricious, sickly spirits through her own sickly desires, and she willingly began hypnotizing the young man with the help of discarnate vampires, whose company she had attracted without realizing it. Thus, unconsciously controlled, Jorge went from loving Zelda to having feelings for Mariana instead, and he realized that his new affection was growing dangerously, totally out of his control. After a few months, they began to meet secretly in an intimacy that entangled them more deeply. Zelda noticed the change in Jorge, but attributed his indifference to exhaustion from work and to family problems. However, only 2 weeks before the wedding, poor Zelda was surprised by an unexpected and heartbreaking confession. Who had told her about what was tearing him up inside. He didn't deny his great affection and admiration for her, but for a long time now he had known that Brianna was the one that should be his wife. The jilted bride stifled her heart, wrenching dismay, and didn't react, apparently. But introverted and desperate, that same evening she poisoned herself to death. Mad with grief, Zelda discarnate and was rescued by our sister Luisa, who was already at Mansao due to her maternal merits. The distraught mother begged for the support of her superiors. As a mother, she felt sorry for both women. In her eyes, the betrayer Marina was more unfortunate than the jilted Zelda, even though the latter had assumed the terrible depth of suicide. But in her case, it was mitigated because of her mental alienation after having been unduly condemned to supreme abandonment. After the facts were lovingly analyzed by Minister Sancio, whom we knew personally, he determined that Mariana was to be regarded as a debtor of an account that she herself had increased. Immediately after his decision, he made arrangements for Zelda to be sent back to her former home to receive the treatment she deserved. Mariana had failed the trial of self-denial on behalf of the sister who had been her generous creditor, but consequently she had condemned herself to sacrifice for that same sister who, according to the laws decreed, was to live under Mariana's roof as a suffering yet immensely beloved daughter. Thus, Jorge and Mariana were finally free to get married, accomplishing on earth the loving communion they had longed for. 2 years after the wedding, they received Zelda into an embroidered cradle as their beloved daughter. But after the first few months, they became aware of her dolorous trial. Zelda, now called Nilda, was born deaf and mentally impaired as a result of a trauma caused to her perispirit by willfully poisoning herself to death. Unconscious and tormented in the depths of her being by the asphyxiating memories of her recent past, she wept continuously, almost day and night. The more she suffered, however, the more love she received from her parents, who loved her with extraordinary display of caring and compassion. Their life was proceeding normally despite the tribulations of the natural hurdles of their journey. When a few months ago, Jorge had to leave his family and go to a leprosarium for treatment. Ever since then, between her sick husband and unfortunate daughter, Marianne, due to her increased debt, has suffered the terrible distress we are witnessing today. She too is being assaulted by the temptation of suicide. The assistant became silent. Both Hilario and I were amazed and moved. The problem was dreadful from a human point of view, but entailed an invaluable lesson regarding divine justice. Sila stroked the sleeping woman's head and added, "The Lord will help us so that she recovers and finds courage to go on."
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So it's mostly a description of what's the story here we're facing, right? In the previous life, Marina came to help Jorge and Zilda, because she had come between the two newlyweds in the previous life and caused them to go back to the spiritual world in anguish, madness. And they allow that, eventually they reincarnated. Marina and Zilda as sisters. Zilda met Jorge. They had to marry, but Marina was supposed to be there just following and helping them from a distance. She was to love the same man, but this time in the silence of self-denial. But she couldn't. Again, free will, we have our free will. She couldn't resist. She decided to interfere in their relationship. And when she decides to conquer him, of course, she attracted the inferior spirits, as they say, the sickly spirits, vampires, discarnate vampires, who are always there trying to associate with those that want to cause harm, to make things worse. So what happened is Zilda finds out 2 weeks before the marriage, kills herself. Of course, her case of suicide was mitigated because of her mental alienation. It's, every case of suicide is different, right? And she was given eventually an opportunity to be born again because Marina and Jorge got married. She came as their daughter, now called Nilda, and but she was born deaf and mentally impaired as a result of the trauma consequences caused to their perispirit by the suicide, by poisoning herself in that case, right? But the parents really loved her with an extraordinary display of caring and compassion, which is very interesting. Of course, Jorge loved her before, but he was infatuated by Marina, and Marina loved her as a sister. So when they received her as a child, instinctively they would have all this love for her. But they are struggling. All three of them are struggling, and Marina now is tempted by committing suicide. So Sila says here, the Lord will help us so that she recovers and finds courage to go on. Okay, it's mostly a description of the case, not much to comment here. Elmo, anything here?
No, João.
Okay, Zoraida? the last part now.
Yes. Just then, Luisa entered the room, anxious and despondent. She was informed about the latest events and thanked us, wiping her tears. Silas, however, wanting to complete his assistant, applied additional magnetic passes to the debilitated mother. We then witnessed an unforgettable scene. Marina's spirit rose from her sleeping body and looked at us with vacant and inexpressive eyes, as if he wanted to awaken her perceptions. The assistant touched her eyes with hands haloed in luminous fluids, and suddenly, like a blind woman who has just recovered her sight, the poor creature saw Luisa, who held out her friendly and loving arms to her. With tears streaming from her eyes, she immersed herself in Luisa's bosom, crying out with joy, "Mother, dear mother, is it really you?" Luisa held her close very gently, as if it were a sick child, and barely holding back her emotion, said to her sadly, "Yes, my dear daughter, it is me, your mother. Let us thank God for this short time together." Although afflicted, she kissed Marina tenderly and continued, "Why are you so discouraged when the battle has just begun? Don't you know that suffering is our heavenly caretaker? What would become of us, Marina, if suffering didn't help us think of and feel the good? Rejoice the fight that purifies and saves us for God's work. Don't make love a hell for yourself, and don't think you can bring relief to your husband and your daughter with the illusion of thoughtless escape. Remember that the Lord transforms the poison of our errors into healthy medicine for the redemption of our wrongs. Our hopeless disease and our needless trial are a blessed pathway of spiritual growth, not only for the two of them, but also for your spirit, which has joined their lives in the redemptive plan. Learn how to suffer with humility so that your suffering is not merely a matter of wounded pride. What has become of your courage as a wife and your dedication as a mother? Have you forgotten the value of prayer that you learned in our home? Have you deceived yourself so much that you would embrace cowardice as moral glory? There's still time. Wake up, get out of bed, fight and live. Live to recover the feminine dignity that you tainted with the stain of betrayal. Remember your little sister who left this world burdened by the affliction you imposed on her, and with the devotion and sacrifice to your sick daughter, pay your debt to eternal justice. Humble yourself and redeem your conscience by paying the price of glorious, yet just expiation. Work and serve, trusting in Jesus, because the divine physician will restore your husband's health so that together we can lead sick little Nilda to the portal of renewal. Don't think you're all by yourself on those long, lonely nights when you are torn between sleeplessness and desolation. We dare the same dreams and the same struggles. What kind of heaven is there for maternal hearts that weep beyond the grave, but the presence of their beloved children, even though they cause them long days of anguish? Take pity on me, your mother, for the time being condemned to suffering for her love for you. Luisa stopped, insensate sobs choking her voice. Marina kneeled down in tears and kissed her mother's hands while pleading, "My dear mother, forgive me, forgive me." Luisa stood the girl up with great effort and giving us an idea of maternal Calvaries that continue to bind great women to their families after death. She led her with unsteady steps back to the infirm child. Stroking the child's sweat-soaked brow, Luisa implored humbly, "Dearest daughter, don't look for the false door of desertion. Live for your little girl, just as the Lord allows you, or allows me to continue living for you." Feeling renewed, the young mother threw herself on the poor child, but as if emotion of that moment suffocated her awakened mind, she was suddenly attracted by her physical body like a bit of iron to a magnet. She woke up, bathed in tears, crying out half consciously, my daughter, my daughter." The assistant respectfully said goodbye to Luisa and affirmed, praise be to God, Marianne has reemerged, transformed." We left in silence. Outside, distant clouds were crowned in the published light of dawn.
Purplish.
Purplish light of dawn. And with my soul filled with gratitude, with hope, I meditated on the infinite goodness of God, who makes the sun rise after each night, bringing the blessings of a new day.
Thanks.
Okay.
So what we have here is Luisa, the mother, right? Coming and meeting the daughter that is sleeping, Marina. And it's interesting, once again, as we see Marina, she can only see the mother. She doesn't see the others that are around. We saw that, if you remember, on the book Missionaries of the Light, when we have the Segismundo's parents in their sleep, and his future mother wakes up, sees only the grandmother. The father doesn't see anyone. So we see those who we connect to. So she sees Luisa only. She doesn't see Silas. She doesn't see Andre Luiz or Hilario. She talks to the mother. The mother, Luisa, talks to her in a very loving and kindly but firm way, trying to prevent her from making things worse. She says, don't make love a hell for yourself, and don't think you can bring relief to your husband and your daughter with your illusion of thoughtless escape, what Elmo mentioned, right? She was thinking of killing herself to bring her relief to the husband and daughter, but she would only bring more pain and suffering to them. Remember that the Lord transforms the poisons of our errors in healthful medicine for the redemption of our wrongs. So she continues talking. There is still time. Wake up, fight. Remember your sister. Remember that that now is your daughter. Pay your debt to eternal justice. Humble yourself. Redeem your conscience. All the advices for her to face the challenges, the expiations that are part of her journey that she has to learn and to serve in this existence. Luisa finishes her talk. Marina kneels down, asks for forgiven for her mother. They embrace, and she goes back. She wakes up feeling renewed. She tries to address the issues with her daughter, and Silas then said goodbye to Luisa, who's of course going to stay with her daughter, saying, "Our Marina has reemerged, transformed. Praise be to God." And that's the end of the chapter. Okay? Elmo, anything here?
No, not really, John. And I think it's very straightforward chapter. I heard someone there.
Okay, so next month we do chapter 13, and we are going now to next week we'll do the Jesus in Our Home, and we will ask Carol now to do our final prayer.
Thank you very much, John, for hosting, and thank you, Elmo. Thank you also, Sarita, for reading for us today, and to everyone who is here participating. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together today for our studies of the book Action and Reaction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't sure. Sorry. We give thanks to be together again for our studies of the book Action and Reaction, Chapter 12, Aggravated and Increased Debt. Workers of the institution provide fraternal assistance, love, understanding, and spiritual medication for the struggling and rebellious souls in the purgatory. Desperate and inferior sentiments can hold them back and could cause harm to those inside actually receiving help directly. Inferior spirits can influence a potential suicide, as well as the good spirits, who can, through prayer of a mother perhaps, and through magnetic passes of the fluidic energies given, There is a plan for transformation and redemption through work and service, and also forgiveness during a new incarnation, with links to all who are connected to the challenges of the aggravated debt. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all participants. We pray for inner peace and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.